The twin suns of Vensura hung low, casting long copper shadows across the mineral flats as Toma Fairchild stepped off the mag tram at Outpost 19. The settlement looked worse than it had a week ago. Scorch marks on the perimeter wall. Fewer. Patrol drones. No Kylari sentries posted at the gate. Toma's antennae twitched. The place smelled like fear and old smoke. His family's nutrient ranch in the Vallis Cradle was 3 cycles from harvest. Storm season was closing in fast, and raiders had been pushing deeper into the region. His mom, Vila, had done everything possible, but they couldn't hold it together alone anymore. He needed help. Inside the Central Exchange, off-worlders loitered by the job board. Syndicate contractors, a Torgathi merc who reeked of blood and oil, a trader whose weapon holster was too clean to trust. Not the kind of help you hired unless you had no other options or no morals. Toma started to leave. Then he saw the human, sitting alone near a broken cooling unit. Quiet. Scarred armor. Not looking for work. Not talking. Just watching. Toma walked over. One of the mercs chuckled behind him. "Careful, bug boy, the humie's got skin and bleeds real easy." Toma ignored him. "Need work?" he asked the human. The man looked up, calm and unreadable. "What's the job?" "Nutrient farm. Cradle Valley. Storms coming early. I need hands." The human didn't ask much, just said, "Why me?" Toma hesitated, then answered, "My father used to say the quiet ones were the ones to watch. Not because they were dangerous, because they were capable." The man nodded once. "Rylan Maddox." And just like that, he joined him. They were halfway to the skiff when a voice called out from the upper platform. "Toma Fairchild." "A moment, if I may." Toma turned. Administrator Ren Corliss strolled down the ramp flanked by 2 enforcer. Drones, datapad tucked like a prop under one arm. Dust-free robes? Too clean. "Leaving without checking in?" Corliss asked smoothly. "Your father always respected protocol." Toma kept his tone polite. "We're short on time." Corliss eyed. "Rylan." "A human? Odd choice. There are more reliable locals. Brad Corin, for instance." Toma answered carefully. "I've heard stories about Brad. Didn't trust what I smelled on him." The smile on Corliss's face flickered for just a second. "I'm only trying to look out for you, Toma. I know. But I've made my choice." Corliss gave a tight nod and stepped back. "Best of luck, then." As the skiff powered up, Rylan looked over. "You handled that well." Toma blinked. "I wasn't sure if I did." "You were polite. Didn't back down. That's more than most." The ranch came into view as the suns dipped lower. Dome clusters patched with salvaged plating. 2 old turrets, one clearly offline. Smoke from a cooking vent. Rylan stood quietly, taking it all in. No judgment, just awareness. Vila met them. "Outside. This is my mom, Vila," Toma said. She studied the human for a long moment. Antennae still. "He accepted?" "He did." Vila gave Rylan a short nod. "Then let's get to it. Storms are early." They worked side by side the next day. Irrigation lines, failing veins, busted regulators. Rylan didn't talk much. Toma did. "My father built all this from scrap," he said, tapping a welded valve. "They said it wouldn't hold." 5 cycles later, still flowing. Rylan checked the weld. Clean work. Efficient layout. Toma turned away to hide the way his antennae lifted. Pride was hard to carry when you were also carrying doubt. They climbed the turbine tower later. Wind screaming. Toma asked, not meeting Rylan's eyes. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm just keeping it running? Not really running it." Rylan checked. The stabilizer gave it a test spin, then said, "You showed up. You keep it working. That's what running it looks like." Toma didn't answer, but he smiled. That evening, the sky turned red. Not beautiful. Wrong. Vila came from the dome. Storm band shifted. 2 days early. Toma looked to the ridge. Rylan was already there. No rifle, no armor seal. Just a scanner and that steady walk. Toma caught up to him as he crouched by a pylon. "Tracks," Rylan said. 4, maybe 5. Came close. Turned back. Toma's mandibles clicked. "Scouts?" Rylan nodded. "Looking for weakness." Toma hesitated. "Do you think they'll come?" "Yeah." "What do we do?" "We do what we must." That night, Vila asked, "Why him?" Toma thought a moment. "He reminded me of Dad. The quiet ones. The capable ones. Vila didn't say it, but she smiled. A real one. Later outside, Rylan spoke softly. If you want me gone, I'll go. Vila didn't blink. Toma made the call. I trust him. Rylan gave a dry chuckle. First one yet? That's when he knew. He wasn't just protecting a job anymore. At dawn, the alarm sounded. A siege walker crested the ridge, 6 meters tall, armored, surrounded by raiders. The dome's turrets wouldn't hold, and there was no sign of Rylan. Toma and Vila stood by the viewport as the walker advanced. The first raider dropped without a sound. Just a quick reminder before we get started. Only 4% of my viewers have subscribed to the channel so far. If you enjoy the content, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to hit that subscribe button and support the channel. You so much. Now continue amazing story. The second caught a round behind the ear. Rylan took fire, shoulder, leg, but didn't stop. His knife punched clean through armor. His rifle worked fast, efficient, brutal. Then the walker turned. It's cannon! Rylan ran. Shrapnel tore into his side. He rolled, bleeding, and planted a shaped charge at the walker's weak joint. Boom! The machine collapsed. Smoke, sparks, silence. And Rylan still breathing. Toma watched the wreck through the dome window. No signal, no movement, just smoke. And silence. Rylan checked the wreck. Inside, one of the pilots wore a Colonial Authority badge. He pocketed it. Said nothing. Back at the dome, he handed it to Vila. Her expression hardened. If Port Relic finds out, they'll call this treason. Rylan didn't blink. Thanks for the warning. 3 days later, dropships landed. Black and silver armor. No insignias visible until they stepped out. Aegis Command, the lead officer, cybernetic eyes, command caller, walked straight to Rylan. Commander Maddox. Toma stared. Commander? Echelon unit, Rylan said. Embedded 6 months, the officer nodded. Port Relic's logs were doctored. We're locking down the sector. Told you, Rylan said. As the soldiers spread out, Administrator Corliss emerged from the ridge, a plasma pistol drawn. You're going. To vanish. This stays mine. Rylan turned. Too slow. Crack. Corliss dropped the weapon, screaming. Toma stood with a field rifle. Hand steady. No hesitation. You're done. Rylan looked at him. No words. Just respect. Rylan stood at the edge of the field, gear packed, rifle slung. The land behind him, quiet, scarred, and still standing. Toma walked up. He handed over. A slim data chip. If you ever need help, real help, use that. Toma turned it over. And if you ever need backup? Rylan smiled. I've got a feeling I already have it. And then he was gone, into the dust and the silence. But not forgotten. Enjoy next amazing story. 4 men crouched together in the narrow shadow of the parapet. The sun was setting slowly behind a curtain of cottony cloud, and the air, as always at twilight, was clear and still. 350 yards away was the dirty red clay embankment where the rifts were hidden. The setting sun threw long rays of hazy, smoky light across the rise of the hill behind them. On their left, the trench was blown away by artillery. Fire, assorted body parts showed throughout the dirt thrown up by explosions. They had marched, eaten, and fought beside those men, all dead now. Better keep your head away from that opening, kid, or you'll get it blown away. Young Billy Tyson pulled his head back, and in almost the same instant, a spout of sand leaped from the sandbag and splattered over his face. Carter smiled wryly, and Bosco, the Tennessean, looked up from the knife he was sharpening. He was always sharpening his knife and kept it with a razor edge. Tall and thick-bodied, he had a squared jaw, dark brown hair, and bright blue eyes. The man an absolute force on the battlefield, and Tyson was glad they were fighting on the same side. You got anything to eat? Carter asked suddenly, looking over at Tyson. Nothing. I ate my last nutrient pack before that last attack, he said. I could have crushed 10. You? Carter looked at Jerry the Irishman. Jerry shrugged. I ate mine so long ago I've forgotten. Jerry was wrapping his ankle with a soiled piece of his shirt. A bullet had clipped his leg armor the day before. A fragment broke off, making a superficial but nasty wound. Somewhere down the broken line of trenches, there was a brief volley followed by several spaced rifle shots, then another brief spatter of firing. At least they knew someone on their side was still alive. Carter was wiping the dust from his rifle, testing the action. Then he reloaded, taking his time. "They're tough," he said to no one in particular. "Real tough." "With the way they look, I figured they'd be dumb or weak," Jerry said. "And they're not either one." "Nope. Plus that shell of theirs is damn near bulletproof," said Tyson. "They can have it as far as I'm concerned," Carter said. "This planet, I mean. That colonel, the fat one." Bosco moved a handful rocks along the parapet to get a better view. "I heard him mention they thought these rifts we're calling them, aren't even from this system. Don't know how they figured that." "That reminds me," Jerry interjected. He took his time, looking over the bandage on his leg before continuing. "I know where some bourbon is." In his dirty and piecemealed armor, Jerry looked a little run down. His left pauldron was missing, and his shoulder was stained with blood, and the threads in his undersuit had begun to unravel around a bullet hole. He had been hit 9 times since the fighting began, but mostly they were scratches. He had lost one boot and scavenged a replacement that was a size too small, hence a gap that led to his injury. Jerry continued to wrap his ankle, and nobody said anything. Tyson zoned out, looking across at the neat row of men stacked side by side, near the far parapet. As he looked, a bullet struck one of them, and the body jerked. It didn't matter, though. They were the lucky ones, as they were already dead. "Over there in the cellar," Jerry said. He nodded his head to indicate a squat, gray stone building on the peak of a conical hill, about a quarter-mile away. That fat colonel was using the cellar for his personal stash. He brought a lot of grub in there, too. Not just nutrient packs, but meat and cheese. Bosco glanced up and mumbled, "It may still be there." Then he pulled a hair from his head and tested the edge of his blade, flashing a rare smile when the hair cut clean. "Maybe we should go have a look." "They'd blast us out of our socks before we got halfway there," said Carter. "Nighttime or not, that's a tough run." "Hell," Jerry said. "We're just about done anyway. Rifts don't seem to take prisoners, and look how long we've been here with no relief. I think we've been written off by command." "It's been 75 days, Tyson agreed. "I think anyone from command is already dead," said Bosco. "I haven't seen an officer in a week. Only that corporal a couple days ago. They seem to know to always pick off the officers. Those rifts can shoot." Carter looked at Tyson. "How'd you get roped into this outfit anyway?" "Was working on freighter ship that got commandeered by the Terran Navy. They dumped the crew planetside only for an army patrol to gather us up. When I said I wasn't a Terran soldier, just worked on an outer colony freighter, so they had no rights, they didn't care. Only asked if I could use a gun, and like a fool, I said yes. Hell, I grew up fighting against pirates and raider groups. So, here I am. They wanted men, and they didn't care where or how they got them," Carter said. "Me, I joined the Terran Legion on my own. I was broke, hungry, and in a different system. It looked like an easy way out. Off to the left, there was an outburst of firing, the sound of someone scrambling over rocks, then silence. A big German man popped up 15 feet down the line, coming in at full speed. Shots smacked all around him, and at the last second, he dropped down and joined up with the 4. The left flank collapsed. 'They're coming,' was all he said before popping up and returning fire. The 4 men climbed wearily to their feet and saw the long line of rifts marching down the slope. Along the blasted-out parapet, guns opened fire, blasting away at the endless number of rifts. Tyson lined up mag packs for his gun close at hand, then slowly he began to fire at the advance, making every shot count. Bosco and Jerry emptied mag after mag in full auto. The heat pouring off the guns were causing trails of sweat to cut through the dust on their faces. Finally, when the rifts got within spitting distance from the wall, an energy turret from down the right side of the parapet opened up, melted them like wax, and broke the attack. Carter was the last to sit down as he fumbled with his canteen. "Had enough yet, kid?" "I say we cut and run for the whiskey." Tyson shrugged. His face was swollen from the recoil of his rifle, his head hurt from dehydration and hunger, and he was filthy with dust, sweat, and blood. All of them were. They had held their outpost for 75 days against an unrelenting assault that never seemed to tire. Their food was gone. They had very little water, and they couldn't expect any sort of relief. "Nobody around to care anymore," said the German. "The LT got hit yesterday, but the last word he had was everything behind us is getting hit. Hard, too. We're to hold the line at all costs until the final refugees are on the evac shuttles. At last count, there was 48 of us left. We're to fire as long as we can, and when they breach the line, it's every man for himself. The army isn't wasting any more resources on this rock. He looked around absently, then stopped suddenly and looked at Bosco. If you've got the guts to try, then let's have at it. The four men grimly nodded at each other in agreement. Tyson could not believe they were down to 48 men. When he got rounded up, there were 477 at this outpost. He leaned his head back and looked up at the stars, thinking they looked the same as they did at home. Jerry got up. He glanced at Carter and shrugged. "Let's go," he said. And they went. Jerry pointed behind them at a shallow depression. "We'll go down that and follow the ditch. It takes you right up to the building. If we get into that ditch, we can make it. We just have to do it before the night attack." They jumped down fast and landed in the depression. The ground was still hot as they crawled flat on their stomachs, fast but silently. Tyson looked behind him to make sure the others were following, and Bosco flashed a thumbs up with a knife clenched between his teeth and his rifle across his forearms. Just as they were reaching the ditch, where they could get up and run, they heard gravel crunch close by. Tyson looked up, and a riff loomed. Over him, it was the night attack, but much sooner than anyone anticipated. "Run, boys! Get to the ditch!" screamed the German as he jumped up and mowed down the closest set of riffs. The German's automatic rifle cut a swath in the advance, but he was a wide-open target. For a few seconds, all eyes and gunfire centered on him. He held the trigger, down even as his armor boiled away and his spirit left his body. The big German's sacrifice gave the rest of them the chance they needed. Sprinting through the ditch, Carter, Tyson, Bosco, and Jerry made it to the outpost building as the remaining defenders on the parapet opened fire and cleared out the assault. Bosco swept the interior, but the room was empty except for an overturned table in the corner and papers scattered all along the floor. There were a handful of windows that opened to the outside and the heavy door they just came through. Jerry immediately took up lookout through the big window as Carter and Tyson barred the door. Bosco lit a match and found the door to the cellar. In the faint light, Tyson noticed the cut on the side of Bosco's head and his blood-soaked hair. When he noticed Tyson looking at him. Bosco flashed another smile and slid into the cellar. A few moments later, he crawled back up with a couple bottles of bourbon, some champagne, and a sack filled with food. The men ate and drank their fill for the first time in days. After a bit, Tyson crawled into a corner and went to sleep. When he awoke. The sun was just starting to rise, and light was filtering in through the windows. Bosco was sitting next to the cellar doors with a half-empty bottle of bourbon, clearly very drunk. Jerry was peering out of the big window, keeping an eye on the surroundings, while Carter had righted the table and was looking at something intently. "Come here, kid," said Carter. "See this dry creek bed-looking area? This is the way out. When the fighting kicks off, that's where you'll go. Run that down to the end over here." He flipped the page. "And that brings you pretty close to the last of the evac shuttles. What about you all?" "This is our fight, Tyson." Bosco slurred, "Too young to be dying on a backwater like this." "How old are you anyway?" "I'm 22. He lied. Sure you are, kid," laughed Carter. "Try 20. Next time you might fool him. Look when you go. Ditch the rifle. At this point it will only slow you down, but keep your pistol. If you make it to the docks, you might need it. When the time's right, we'll hold them as long as we can for you," said Jerry. Bosco raised his bottle in agreement, then took another big swig. "You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna get good and drunk, open those doors, and show them how we do it down in Tennessee." He drained the rest of the bottle and looked at Tyson. "You should see a sunrise along the Appalachians someday. Man, that's some fine-looking country. I grew up in East Tennessee, right by the Smoky Mountains, signed up to serve during the Second Energy War, then shipped out. During the first contact blitz. Been fighting and feuding ever since. I knew this day was coming for a long time. Just never expected it on a shithole planet like this." He picked up the empty bottle and looked at it. "What we need is some moonshine. Some good old-fashioned Tennessee white lightning. That'll put some hair on your chest, kid." Tyson walked to the window he would be jumping out of and studied the route they planned for him to take. He knew the time to go was approaching quick. He had to be out of here before they were completely overrun. But he couldn't yet tear himself away from these men that he'd fought and bled with. Suddenly shots rang out and Jerry lurched back from the window. An angry red crease showed along his cheek and a bullet tore through his arm. He fired back one-handed as the rest of the room exploded into action. Bosco was up and pulling Jerry back to help bandage his arm while Carter was methodically shooting. From the other side, the Rift's charge was quickly overwhelming the now pathetic response from the rest of the defenders out on the parapet. It was only minutes until the wall fell and the outpost would then be next. Each man in the building was exhausted and weak, but they knew what was to come and they were ready to make one final stand. Tyson wiped the sweat from his eyes, took one last look at the men he had come to know, settled in on the window ledge, and slowly began to fire. 4 soldiers of the Kwong Empire lay sprawled in a shallow bowl-like depression on top of the pass. They were all fresh out of boot, and they got stationed on a remote outpost on the edge of the Karkarthan wastes. Nothing survived out in the wastes, and their only job was to send unmanned drones to recon the interior as much as possible. Half of the drones got fried from the radiation, and the other half had their data corrupted if they even made it back at all. So orders were to repair and refit as best as they could, and above all else keep a sharp lookout. It was a shit posting, and everyone knew it. From their vantage point, the soldiers had a wide field of view for a good half-mile down the way in front of them. Beyond that, the road was only visible in intervals, but a careful watch would alert them long before any threat was in range. Under normal conditions, the reptilian-like Kwongs could see quite a bit further, but the intense heat bleeding out of the wastes played hell with their optics. The comms specialist Adarna clicked his teeth in equal parts frustration and fear. Radio communications and most electronics were cut off 4 days ago. The heat was unlike anything they had ever encountered, and not once did they feel even the slightest breeze. It had lulled them into lethargy, so when they felt the distant rumble of artillery miles out in the desert wastes, it took a few moments for it to register. "Lieutenant," Adarna said nervously. "Yay, I hear it. But what the hell is it?" "Can horde scabs make it through?" Lieutenant Makara replied. "No way. Nothing survives the wastes. It's nothing but heat and radiation." "I think they're coming. We're out on the edge, sir. We're as far from the front as we can get. Shit, I don't know. This whole situation feels wrong. Wake the boys and gear up." For a few moments, camp was alive again as the soldiers woke and gear was slung together, but it wasn't long until Gara, the squad's recon specialist, stopped moving and stared off into the wastes. "Mac," he hissed urgently. "There's something down there, coming our way." "What?" "Can't be one of ours, but what the hell is it?" "Look, it stopped. Now it's looking back," Makara said as he peered over the parapet. "It's coming on again. Want me to try a shot at it when it gets close?" "Wait. I want to see what it is. It's definitely not scab." The sun continued to rise, and the heat grew even more oppressive. The figure moved slowly but methodically towards the group, seeming to utilize every piece of cover available like it knew it was being watched. The figure finally crossed the last bend that gave the Kwong a clear view. It was a human. He was big, almost twice the size of a good-sized Kwong, but he was walking along slowly with a heavy limp and carrying something large in his hands. When the human made it to the pass, Lieutenant Mac grabbed a rifle and stepped to the parapet. But before he could speak a word, the human looked up. Mac had never seen a face so strange before. He realized that he had only ever seen humans through vids and the flyers of their promises to help repel the Zuerthan horde. The specimen in front of him now was nothing like what was on the net. The man's face was nearly covered with a few days' growth of black beard. He had a strong jaw, but his nose was crooked with dried, bloody streaks, like it was recently broken. The bandage around his head was bloody and dirty. "Any room up there?" the big man asked. "Well, who are you?" a nervous Mac asked. The big man didn't respond. He just started marching right on up the ridge. He slipped once and fell face down in the rock. Puzzled, the Kwong just watched, not completely sure what to do. When the man finally got up and made it to the top, they were shocked at his appearance. His combat armor was dented and scuffed with multiple pieces of shrapnel stuck in the left side. He carried a Zuerthan HMR rail cannon and 2 bandoliers of pulse grenades. It was enough firepower to wipe out this outpost without breaking a sweat. The gun was usually mounted on an LRV, and with the grenades he was carrying over 100 pounds of kit. How he carried it this far, in this heat, they had no idea. "Name's Jack Callow," he said, "part of a merc unit that got sent to liaise with Kwong Command and provide support. Handful of us went to recon a suspected horde lair out in the wastes." He lowered the rifle and slid the 2 belts to the ground. When he straightened, they could see it was a foot taller than Gara, who was tall for a Kwong and at least 100 dollars heavier. The man bulged with muscles, but you could tell there was a deep weariness in him. Intel was spotty at best due to interference, Callow informed the group. "We managed to find a soft spot, punch through, and bag a queen, but some kind of ion charge knocked out our electronics, killed our power armor, and wrecked most of our gear. Never saw anything like it right after the charge went off. We got hit by a second horde group that recon didn't spot. I don't know how many of us got out of there alive, but couldn't have been many. Couldn't radio evac, so orders are scatter and survive. The last 4 days have seen me scrambling through the wastes. Koska, the last Kwong soldier to speak, looked over to Callow and asked, "How'd you get that gun?" "That's a horde weapon." A scab-fast craft found me out on an open stretch, and we had trouble. The truck got fragged, so I took the gun. Picked up a couple other souvenirs in the process. He pointed to the bloody bandage on his head. They got a signal off, though, and a battalion of Zur scabs and a couple grav tanks peeled off to track me down. They're just a few hours behind me. "Well, shit, why didn't you say so?" yelped Adarna. "We need to warn the troops behind us." "Yeah." Callow didn't take his eyes off cleaning the rifle. "That second wave moved out ahead and broke through the northern pass. This one here is just a support column to clean up leftovers." "So, we're cut off?" asked Adarna. Callow nodded. "You have been for about 3 days. My guess is your forward command has its hands full right about now." "They're coming," Garrus said. He was plainly worried. "I can see the tanks, and one is listing to the left. Scabs following tightly behind, left a couple mines along my trail to soften them up a bit. Must have winged one of them." "Good. They stay bunched like that, and it makes it easier for us," said Callow. "So, what do we do?" Koska asked. "We can't hope to stop all of that with just the 5 of us." Callow realized the question was directed at him, and the rest of the Kwong were staring at him intently, eager for a response. "Koska, you're with me. We need to let the tanks get close, and so the HMR still has enough punch to open up the soft spot on the top. You 3, rifles to the wall, and keep the scabs bunched in the center, but don't shoot until after we knock those tanks out. If we funnel the scabs right up the center, we can lob grenades over the ledge to keep them from climbing up." They went silent, all focusing on the next coming hours. The heavy rumble of the tank's gravity inverters and clanking of the scabs marching grew louder. "All right," Callow said suddenly. He popped up over the wall and fired off 3 shots as quick as the HMR would cycle. The first into the back left grav inverter of the second tank, dumping it into the ground. The second 2 into the top of the lead tank, dispatching it immediately. Beside him, Koska followed up with both barrels of the outpost's lone missile. Launcher into the top of the second tank, ending that threat for good. The scabs went wild. Standard tactics for them meant spreading out, rushing their foe with overwhelming numbers. Makara, Gara, and Adarna had other plans, though. They opened fire just as Callow instructed, trying their best to keep the scabs bunched. Scabs further back found their enemy and opened fire on their enemies. Gunfire poured on the parapet. They broke for cover and fire washed over them, but plenty got away into the rocks. It was a complete surprise for the scabs that left. Dozens dead and injured, but only a gash over Adarna's left arm. It ended as quick as it was over. "Nice going, fellas," Callow said. "But this was the easy one. The next one is where it gets tough. They're spread out now and they'll come in fast, scattered out. Pick your shots and make them count. Better to get one sure thing than 5 maybes." Slow, methodic rifle fire began to sweep the parapet. It was a searching fire designed to keep the defenders' heads down while the scabs organized their rush. Mac was quiet. While officially in charge, he yielded his command over to Callow and the man's superior experience. "What do we do?" Mac asked Callow. "We got the drop on them last time. They don't know how many of us there are right now, but they'll figure it out with the next rush. We'll stop them again, but after that, we need to hightail it out." "The back door?" Adarna was incredulous. "What? You mean to run? Leave our post? How do we survive out there?" "That's exactly what I mean," replied Callow. "We hit this bunch hard and got ours from them, but it's over soon. We stick around much longer and it's game over for us." The scabs popped up and came in a rush. Cover fire opened up behind them, forcing Callow and the others to keep their heads down while they watched them get close. Once the scabs made it just past the downed tanks, silver softballs came hurtling down from the outpost. The pulse grenades exploded into a brilliant white light that burned and blinded anything nearby, absolutely decimating the frontal charge. 2 rifles opened up from the outpost, mowing down any of the stragglers that happened to be lagging. Then on things quieted a bit, and there was sporadic fire traded from both sides, with the soldiers in the outpost continually circling the walls looking for movements. Suddenly there was a tremendous concussion, then another and a third. "Are those more?" asked Ganna, but before he could finish, the shell landed right where he was squatting. It went off with a head-splitting roar that threw flames, sand, and gravel throughout the outpost. 2 more blasts went off, vaporizing Ardarna. Everything went dark for Koska and he didn't know where he was, but suddenly he felt something strong grasp his ankle and yank him upwards. He emerged from his burial spitting dirt, his ears ringing, and someone shouting, "Let's go, we gotta get out of here!" He blindly broke into a stumbling run and felt Mac pushing him along as they ran out the back of the outpost and down the backside of the ridge. Frantically, they crossed the ravine beyond and continued to run, finally coming across a small stream about a mile from their post. They slowed to a walk, and that's when Koska finally realized Kallo wasn't with them. "Where's Kallo?" a panicked Koska asked. "I don't know. He yelled for us to run and said he would catch up," replied Mac. An explosion and the rattling of gunfire back the way they came gave them a burst of energy, cut the conversation short. They walked on as dusk came and darkness grew. Wearily, plagued with exhaustion, they plodded on until they found a small overhang in the rocks just big enough for the 2 of them to rest as they were ready to collapse. Exhaustion overtook them, and they slept deeper than intended until the crunch of a boot on rock woke them. It was Kallo climbing down to meet them. "Set a little trap to send our friends some company," explained Kallo. "I can't believe they're gone," said Mac, looking defeated. "Yeah, lucky it wasn't all of us," nodded Kallo. "But what now, Kallo?" asked Koska. "We'll travel at night and keep to cover. We're just 3 men traveling light so we can keep out of sight. I want to get back to command, gear up, and get back in the fight. Earth is mobilizing its fleets and marching to war. We just need to stay alive until they get here. Then there will be plenty of fighting somewhere, and that's where I want to be." Makara nodded determinedly and replied with the first bit of zeal since this started. "Yeah, us too. Thanks for diving into this story with me. Don't miss out on the next one. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a big thumbs up, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think."